Tyler Herro has been on an absolute tear lately, almost certainly a lock to win Sixth Man of the Year award, but can he be considered a superstar? We'll debate Tyler's qualifications, then go through a 2019 NBA redraft before looking ahead to Wednesday's big game against the Phoenix Suns. This is the episode that might finally tear the podcast apart, so keep it right here on Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. A big week continues for your Miami Heat, and we'll be previewing tonight's matchup versus the Phoenix Suns. Although they're somewhat undermanned, it should still be a very good game. Both Wes and I will be at FTX Arena, bringing you all the coverage that you deserve. And we'll also look ahead to potential playoff seeding and whether or not Miami might have an ideal matchup in the first few rounds of the playoffs before they continue on their run to the NBA Finals. But we'll start off today's show with a question you brought up to me, Wes, which was an interesting one because I don't think we're seeing a lot of people asking this question outside of Heat Nation. But can Tyler Herro be considered a star? Because even today, I'm seeing a big swath of Twitter discourse regarding whether or not Tyler should even be considered the Sixth Man of the Year winner. Like, because his minutes numbers are too high, disregarding completely the fact that every other Sixth Man of the Year winner plays over 30 minutes per game.
Yeah.
I just, the discourse is ridiculous, but as
Yeah.
far as superstardom, that's kind of harder to qualify there.
It is.
So what was it that led to this decision making from you? Like, what was it that you want to talk about Tyler's star status?
Well, exactly what you're talking about, because it is so hard to quantify. And first of all, before we get out of the Sixth Man of the Year, is that really like the minutes? Like, that's not the rules. The rules are the rules. And it's very easy to quantify what the rules are. If you play more than 50% of your games coming off the bench, you're eligible for Sixth Man of the Year. And under those qualifications, Tyler Herro is the best player that meets those categories. So, of course, he's Sixth Man of the Year. Enough with that. As far as whether or not he is a star, and I almost texted you. I was like, should we talk about whether or not he's a superstar? He's not a superstar. LeBron is a superstar. Steph Curry is a superstar. Giannis is a superstar. I don't know if how close is Tyler Herro to getting to star level? Does it matter that he doesn't start? Because I don't really think a lot of people know that he doesn't start. Because I think for a star player, now you're starting to reach the casual fans. And he's been in Jack Harlow music videos. He's got star qualities about him. And like, I know we joke around about the Jack Harlow stuff, but Jack Harlow is like one of the biggest names in hip hop right now. Like that, and Tyler Herro is the name of one of his songs, and it's one of his biggest songs. It's one of his top streamed songs on Spotify. And all like that stuff. We joke about it, but it matters, right? When we talk
Right.
about the star conversation and just and sort of a player's Q rating. And so in those cases, you would feel like Tyler Herro would be a star, right? Even if he was maybe undeserving. And I think that was sort of the conversation coming out of the bubble was like, all right, cool. Like you had some nice moments, but you haven't really proven anything, and your team didn't win the finals. So, but now I think after last year's slump and the Heat kind of being under the radar all season long, I kind of feel like for some reason that Q rating has gone down. I don't think Tyler Herro is a star. I think he's capable of being a star. I don't think it has anything to do with his talent or his performance on the court. I just don't think he's getting that star treatment. And there's a few things that we could talk about, David, but I guess I'll just throw it to you. I think you would agree with me. But why do you think that is?
I think it's mostly the playoff experience. It's been off quoted
Against
but
Milwaukee.
I'll never forget that. I think that's part of it. I think the bubble was not just it was a metaphor in the fact that I think it was for the insular basketball fan, like people who eat, breathe, and work in the realm of basketball as you and I do. the bubble was a glorious experience, especially in context of like the difficulties around us. We're regarding social justice movements, the start of the pandemic, etc. There was so much going outside of our lives that was such a pressure filled situation for us. Not to go all John Crotty here, but the bubble was like such a great release to see really really good basketball being played at its purest form. And Tyler thrived under those circumstances, advancing all the way to the NBA Finals. Last year he gets swept, pretty much disregarded. Also,
Yeah.
last year, the season itself was such a strange one with so
Yeah.
many players missing time, Tyler himself missing some time, that it's kind of hard. And it was a little underwhelming. And look, I'll be
Mhm.
honest with you. I feel like a lot of local media outlets contributed to the view that Tyler was underwhelming as a sophomore, which I totally disregard and don't agree with. He just didn't take the star leap that many people expected he might be capable of in his second season. But here we are in season 3, and I keep thinking about something Walt Frazier told me, and again, this was what I was getting at before, off quoted. The regular season's where you make your name, but the playoffs is where you make your fame. And Tyler just hasn't had that experience yet during a relatively normal season
Yeah.
of being able to carry his team or be the player that a lot of people go, hey, that Tyler Hero is a lot of fun. Like at FTX Arena, no player gets the fans more excited than Tyler Hero. Not
Mhm.
Jimmy Butler, not Bam Adebayo, not a block by anybody, not even another team's players. Tyler Hero is the one with every fan lives and dies by every shot. They just absolutely love that kid.
Yeah. There's an
Outside of that, I
anticipation
just
to
don't.
his game, but I'm glad you bring up the FTX Arena stuff because, like, Tyler Hero's best moments came in front of no fans.
Yeah,
It was on television during the lowest rated playoffs the NBA's had in a very long time without fans in the arena, right? That matters, right? When you're not playing in
absolutely.
front of 18 to 20,000 fans every single playoff game. And yeah, I think that's certainly part of it. Is it doesn't make as loud of a noise. It makes a noise, but not as loud of a noise, and it doesn't reverberate the way that you need it to reverberate in order to kind of take that leap to stardom. Now, again, Tyler Hero doesn't start. He averages 20 points per game. He doesn't really have high flying dunks. He's not really shooting logo threes and stuff the way that guys like Trae Young and Damian Lillard, obviously
I'd
Steph, are
argue that
doing.
Trae Young isn't even a star, right? Like I don't
He's
think people
closer to
consider him.
Tyler. He's closer than Tyler is, but I think I would agree with you. I don't think that. I think that there are people who kind of. Do I walk by like a basketball court outside or something, somebody playing pickup, and do I hear them debating Tyler Hero as much as I might hear somebody debating Trae Young? No, I don't. Even
Oh yeah,
LaMelo Ball in that instance is sort of a bigger star
that's that's
than
different.
Tyler
That's
Hero.
yeah, that is
But
an aberration, I think.
but he's flashy, and I think Tyler Hero does have some of that pizzazz and that sizzle to his game, and I think we've seen instances of it. But I've got a few stats here because you mentioned it's so hard to quantify, and I tried to find something to quantify it. And House of Highlights, the Instagram and Twitter account, social media account, is sort of the preeminent voice platform of basketball highlights. So much that it got bought out by Turner, which
Hmm.
is in partner the majority partner of the NBA. So
Right.
House of Highlights, I would say, is again the preeminent platform for basketball highlights. Do you know the last time Tyler Hero had a highlight posted to the House of Highlights account?
2019.
Not quite, but November 17th.
What was it?
It was that weird lob to Bam against the Pelicans that ended up going in.
Oh, so a mistake then. Like
Yeah,
not even
that
yeah,
was it.
not even like a play that was actually a game changer or
I
anything.
will
Kind of like
say
oops.
that's not completely fair. He actually did have one on January 6th. It was when he fought Nurkic on Portland, Yusuf Nurkic, and then
Oh,
got
right,
ejected. So not
right.
even for something that he did, and even before that, on January 2nd, it was all his clip of truck sticking De'Aaron Fox at midcourt by accident and getting a foul call for it, and him arguing that foul call also got posted. So other than two foul calls and an ejection, the last actual highlight he had was November 17th. And to your point, that wasn't even like the coolest thing he's done this year. It was just sort of this accident. It was neat. I was there in person when it happened. I was very confused by it because
Right.
I didn't see it go in the net because it was weird. But that was the last time. The before between now and and that January 6th ejection against Nurkic, somebody like John Morant, I counted 23 highlights posted since the last time Tyler Hero was even mentioned on House of Highlights, and that was for an ejection. So he's not getting that shine, and now you could throw that to national TV and the Heat getting yanked, and I
What would
think
it
part
take?
of that
Let's
is
shift the
Tyler Herro.
conversation a little. Let's
Yeah,
shift a little conversation here. What would it take for Tyler to get that recognition? Because I'm just,
I don't know.
he'd have to have 50-point games a la Ja Morant, I think. We'd also have to have highlight
Yeah.
level dunks, which that's not going to happen. And I don't think the 50-point game is going to happen. Although
Well, I
he's
thought
probably the
last night's buzzer beater from the logo, like that was worthy of a highlight. I mean, based
yeah, but
on
those feel like more like accidental too, right? Like you kind of throw it up there, like you saw that shot by Brandon Ingram where there was like 3/4 of the length of the court. He kind of
that
just
was on
flips
house
it
highlights.
casually. Yeah, I totally get it, but it was
So
also a mistake, right? No one's
yeah,
saying, "Oh, Brandon Ingram superstar" after that shot. This is
I have the answer for you. A game
oh,
winner. It would
you've
be a
got
game
it all
winner.
of a sudden, huh?
No, it's a game winner. He needs
A
a
game
game
winner in the
winning three.
playoffs. A
A game
game winner
winner
in the
even in the
playoffs.
regular season, I think, would do it. I mean,
Mm.
the House of Highlights, it wouldn't make him a star, but just to get posted to this account, just
Oh,
a fourth quarter buzzer beater, that's what it
sure,
would take, I think, for him to even get on this platform at this point. Because he's had several dunks. He's actually one of the leaders on the Heat in dunks
yeah,
this season. It's not like he
right.
doesn't dunk it. It's not like he doesn't have cool, flashy moves. Um, he's just not getting posted on this account for some reason. I don't mean to single out House of Highlights. I was just trying again to find some sort
They're
of way to
trash.
quantify this.
They're trash
But if
according to
he's
Wes Goldberg.
I actually really like that account. But
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's just very clear that the Miami Heat in general are being overlooked, and Tyler Hero is sort of being hurt by that, right? And so I think it's all sort of part of the same thing that
yeah.
we've been talking about all year long is how the Heat are not part of the national conversation in the way we think they ought to be.
Now, there's also a debate that was spurred last week regarding Mike Trout, Major League Baseball player, and
Yeah,
versus Tyler Hero, and
yeah,
there's follower counts on Instagram or Twitter. I don't even know which social media platform there. And there's different things there. I think baseball is somewhat milk toast. It's marketed poorly. It's also
yep.
for older generation of fans. It's not as diverse as basketball is, and I think that's a big part of it too. And look, Tyler's flashier. I mean, he's just cooler as a person, I think, than Mike Trout. Not, I don't know Mike Trout personally, but at the same time,
Well,
I just
yeah,
think the way that they use social media, I think, appeals to people who follow each athlete for whatever
That's
reason.
more of a baseball problem. I understand that people are upset that Mike Trout doesn't have nearly the amount of followers. Like Tyler Hero has like twice as many followers as Mike Trout. And Mike Trout, like statistically, might be the greatest baseball player ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's more of a baseball problem than it
Yeah,
is a problem like that Tyler Hero has anything to do with. You just look at like the Instagram account of Major League Baseball, 8.2 million followers compared to the NBA has 65 million followers.
it's
So
also
if you
global. It's also
that's
global,
exactly,
right?
yeah, and so if you just take a proportion of the MLB followers versus the NBA followers, you just have more NBA people on social media following the accounts of the leagues, the teams, and the players. So I
Right.
don't think that matters at all. And that's again, if we want to go really macro on this, it's like, all right, is social media really the kind of conversation we're having in real life, or is it just the conversation we're having online? And I think more and more, it's sort of just the conversation we're having online because I do think if you walked into any sports bar in America, and or maybe not in America, it depends. Like if you went in Anaheim versus Florida, obviously that would be different. Let's say you just went to a sports bar in Sioux Falls. Uh,
Hmm.
well, then the G League affiliates there, Memphis, Ohio. How many people? If you polled everybody, who is Mike Trout? Who is Tyler Hero? I think more people would know the name Mike Trout than they would Tyler Hero, even if they can't really put a face to the name, which I'm not even sure what Mike Trout looks like.
He needs. I do. Pretty standard and white. Tyler needs to be on TV commercials, and I think that'll happen if he has the continued success that we
Yeah,
expect him to in the NBA playoffs. If Miami goes
yeah,
on a really deep playoff run, like in the finals, and he hits even a buzzer beater, not necessarily even a game winner, I think people will go, "Oh hell, this kid's 22 years old, putting up 30-point games pretty regularly. Why aren't we talking about him?" And I think that's the next step. Then all of a sudden, somebody says, "Oh, you know what? Here he is. He's marketable. He's popular. He's already been named in a very popular song. Why not continue to build off
yeah.
that
The
success?"
Trey
He's
Young
already,
path,
yeah. And
right?
look,
Because he, yeah,
yeah, no, and look, people argued last year that was something the Heat organization didn't want, but you know what? They don't mind Jimmy Butler going on Miller Lite commercials. Miller Lite commercials. I don't think there's really a problem
no,
with
and even the
players.
Heat in today's or like the Heat as militaristic and controlling as they are over the messaging of that organization, they can't stop a star player from getting endorsements. Not in today's day and age. I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. I think that's really well said. I think we're kind of having this kind of question, debate, whatever about how is it that Tyler Herro is a star? Why isn't he a star? But I think you're 100% right, David. I just think if he does what he's doing in the regular season in the playoffs, he will be closer to becoming the household name that he wants to be
Yep.
at that point. Again, it's the Trae Young path, but in the instance of Miami versus Atlanta, you assume that the Heat would be better next year than the Hawks were this year, coming off of what was more of a surprising playoff run to the Eastern Conference Finals last
Yeah.
year. If the Heat can sort of sustain that success, then that would just buoy Tyler Hero's chances of sort of becoming that star player that we think he's capable of being.
So now that we've sort of resolved that question, where would Tyler be selected if the 2019 NBA draft took place today? I know that's somewhat tricky from a time-space perspective, but we'll debate that in the next segment before looking ahead to Wednesday's big matchup versus the Phoenix Suns. But first, just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. And easy is really what they're all about. As fantasy props and pick'ems get more popular, Prize Picks is making it easy for you to play. They do that with the best NBA DFS prop game on the market, offering more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. PrizePicks offers any prop that you can think of, from point scores to rebounds and even steals. And check out the PrizePicks Power Play. Here's how it works. You predict the over-under on a player's fantasy production, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected fantasy totals. PrizePicks even allows mixed sports entries. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. They get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores even a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer just available for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. Do it all using the award-winning app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA, or go to the App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. David, I thought we would do something a little bit different today.
Yep.
We were talking about Tyler Herro, and it got me thinking. And now, if you tune into ESPN and stuff like that, they're having this conversation. Should the Pelicans have taken Ja Morant over Zion Williamson in 2019 because of everything that's happened with Zion and New Orleans and all that stuff?
Yep.
And again, I started like, well, that 2019 draft, when you really step back, pretty loaded. You know, guys like Darius Garland went to the All-Star game this year. RJ Barrett just hung almost 50 points on Miami the other day. It's a pretty loaded draft class with guys who are playing significant roles for really good teams. What if we were to redraft the 2019 draft? Because now we're in year 3 of this thing. That's typically when these players take their leaps. You kind of know what it is that they are at the NBA level. And so I thought we would do that here on the heels of that Tyler Herro conversation. So let's just get right into it. The first pick in that draft was obviously Zion Williamson. I would take Ja Morant with the first pick.
I think that's a no-brainer. Yeah,
it is, right? Okay. So I was wondering at what point that became like sort of a debate based on everything. Even if Zion comes back and he's exactly what he was at the end of last year, which was
Ja might already be better. Yeah, Ja might already be
exactly,
better.
Exactly. And you don't really like Zion. If he comes back, am I convinced that the health issues won't become an issue later on?
Right.
No. But number 2, who would you take at number 2 in this draft?
I still lean towards seeing how NBA franchise make these picks. I think Zion Williamson still has the name recognition, still has the talent that's tantalizing enough, and they'd still take a chance despite the injuries, despite the weight issues, despite everything else that comes with it, despite even the potential for a departure and free agency at some point down the road, etc. I think most teams still take most would take Zion Williamson there. Like, you have a proven commodity, unfortunately, Ja Morant, but also you have the tantalizing potential of Zion, and I think you'd still take him second overall.
And to some degree, a proven commodity. Like, when he's on the court, we know that he's dominant. We know that he puts up numbers by the basket that, prime Shaq was putting up, right? I mean, let's not forget the conversation we were having about Zion Williamson at the end of last season. I'm with you. I would still take Zion number 2. And I kind of hashed it out, but it didn't really take me long to land there. I would still take Zion number 2 because
here's where the debate starts for me here. I think moving on from Ja
and Zion. I thought this was pretty easy. Okay, so who did you have at number 3?
Oh, I thought most teams would take Darius Garland.
Who would you take? You would take Darius Garland too.
I would probably lean Tyler, just
At 3.
because of the yeah, because of the closest of having watched him and seeing what his potential is, and again knowing the work ethic that he's put in and everything else, which is why I discounted all the negativity about Tyler last season, because knowing what he does off the court, you can really see that there is a star in the making to some degree. Regardless of how you define it, or how soon he'll reach it, that potential is there, and he will reach it at some point. It's just whether he does it in year 4 or year 7. I think at some point he will be an all-star. Darius, however, already an all-star, so that's why I
Yeah.
think teams outside of Miami would probably be more interested in selecting a player like that. And he's already proven that he can carry a team, and a team that's already showing playoff potential too. This is his 3rd season, so already proving that he can be the leader of a team as well. So I think that's a big thing too, that people don't know
Yeah,
about Tyler, whether or not he's your star player, whether or not he's your number one go-to option, things of that sort.
that's why I lean Garland number 3. 20.6 points per game, awesome splits, 48% shooting, 38% from 3-point range on 7 attempts a game, 8.1 assists a game. His turnovers are relatively low.
Yeah.
He's a
He's
baller,
flashy.
man.
He's fun. Yeah, he is.
And
We'll
he's
see
he's
him on
fun.
Friday.
He's flashy,
Yeah.
but he's efficient too. And we're gonna see him on Friday. Good point. I'm really excited for that matchup. But yeah, I think it was a no-brainer, Garland at number 3. And it sounds like you're there too. And then I would have Tyler Hero at number 4.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's tough because we see Tyler all the time, and again, all the things I was just talking about. There's certainly star potential, and yet, you see other players, and this isn't a knock either. Like, you don't have to have your first pick in the draft. Like, you can, Dwayne Wayne was taken 5th, and he wound up being pretty good. So I
Yeah.
just think, even looking back, Tyler being ranked 4th as opposed to where he was actually taken, I think speaks well of the kind of player he's become.
Right. And
I
if you look
wonder
at the
whether or
ce
not.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No,
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 if you
no.
look
I'm
at the
curious.
ceiling, if you look at the ceiling of what these 4 guys we just talked about are, Ja Morant, MVP.
Yeah.
That's his ceiling, right? Zion Williamson, probably still that like franchise player type ceiling,
Candidacy.
right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Darius Garland, maybe not MVP, but
Go
perennial
to go
all-star,
to player. Yeah. Go to
go-to
player.
player, perennial all-star, best guard on a championship winning team. Like, that's his ceiling. I think Tyler Hero's ceiling is just right there. I really do.
Can he
And
be your
so,
number one option on a playoff or finals contending
um,
team?
I don't know in today's
That's
NBA
tough.
if a guy.
Right.
That's why I say even with Darius Garland, like best guard on a championship winning team, because I just don't know that somebody like with those sort of games can be the best player on a championship winning team. Like in a league that is continuing to lean towards wings and even lately,
Right.
unicorn centers. So maybe Bam Adebayo could be that guy for Miami if Bam's their best player and Tyler Hero's their second best player. Maybe that's in the nucleus of a championship team. 4 or 5 years down the road once Jimmy and Kyle are gone, but. Yeah, I like that's being like again, being 4th doesn't mean that you're somehow worse. And again, this is a guy who's taken 13 in the
Yeah.
actual draft. And so to kind of rise to the 4th best player in that draft is pretty meaningful.
Yep.
Especially when you consider that like Ja Morant and Zion Williamson are sort of shoe in like blue chippers, right? So you really only have 2 other spots after that because you don't really have in most drafts a prospect even as good as Ja Morant or Zion Williamson, right? So
Yep.
and let's not forget Darius Garland. Like RJ Barrett ended up going number 3 in this draft. I think by the end of it, it was pretty clear that those were your top 3. And
Yep.
Garland ended up going 5 behind Deandre Hunter, who went
Yeah.
4. But Garland was kind of in that mix, right? He was sort of in that debate for that top, like, hey, can he get into the top 3? Like we were talking about him in that kind of way. And so I don't for Garland to stay at to go up from 5 to 3 and then Hero to leap from 13 to 4, that's a pretty substantial leap. Who do you have at
Good.
5? Can I actually give you
Uh,
my 5th?
yeah. Go. Let's go quickly 5 through 10 here.
Yeah. I've got Cameron Johnson at number 5.
Really?
Yeah.
That high? See, I'm surprised at that. Okay.
So here's the thing about Tyler Hero, Darius Garland, and Cameron Johnson, and why I put all 3 of those guys over RJ Barrett. And I actually do like RJ Barrett. I like his game.
Right.
I lean more towards pro Barrett than he's a bust. I just know what they are. I know what Garland, Hero, and Cameron Johnson are. I know it. Like Cameron Johnson's been averaging like 20 points a game since the All-Star break, and he might not play against Miami Wednesday tonight, but because of an injury. But yeah, he's been awesome. We know what he could do for you defensively. He's shown a little bit of like attack and go type stuff off the dribble,
Yeah.
attack and closeouts. Like I just really like what he is as a two-way player. I just know what he is. Whereas RJ Barrett, I still feel like he's sort of figuring it out in year 3. Right? Like he needs a lot of shots. The three-pointer is very hit or miss, right? It was hitting, against Miami a couple weeks ago, but there are other nights where he's like 2 for 11 from 3-point range.
Is he
He just
6
keeps
for you
shooting them.
then? Is RJ 6?
Yeah, I've got him at 6.
Okay, 7th.
Deandre Hunter.
Okay.
I got Matisse Thybulle at number 8. Again,
Yep.
I just know what he is.
Yep.
And that's an elite wing defender, and you need those. I've got Jordan Poole at 9. I could have put him
Oh,
at 8.
wow.
Could have put him at 9.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he's good, man. That guy's a baller. I
I
actually think,
overlooked him. I overlooked him completely.
yeah, you could
I
put
was a
a.
mistake on my part.
I think if you're a team and you're sort of there at 8 or 9 in this draft, and you're like, hey, do we need defense? Take Thybulle. If you need offense, take Jordan Poole, and then that would be fine. And then to round out, like I know we said a top 10. I couldn't figure out who I would take 10 between Keldon Johnson, Grant Williams, Brandon Clark, Kobe White, like all those names. Kind of just it would be like whatever that hypothetical team needed. You could go with any of those guys.
All right.
And
So
I've
I
never
went
been a
5.
Kobe White fan.
I've had 5 RJ Barrett for the reasons you explained. A guy who could score, potential as a wing defender, things of that sort. Keldon Johnson 6.
Oh,
I think there's potential there. Cam Johnson 7th, Matisse Thybulle 8, Hunter at 9, and PJ Washington rounding out the top 10.
PJ Washington's good. I forgot about him. Yep.
Jordan Poole has certainly made an argument for himself, and I know that you followed the Warriors closely because you were reporting on them over the last couple of seasons, so you saw up close what it was that he was capable of. But I guess this is the nuance here, and you know what? Over everything else, you remember the NBA draft is trash anyway. It's
you hate the draft.
stupid,
Yeah, it's your least favorite segment ever.
Yeah, a redraft of something that I couldn't care less about.
Redoing something you didn't like in the first place.
I remember having fun though. Was it? Yeah, I think this was when we were doing the Blue Book analysis of all of our players. That was fun. I'll be honest with you.
For this draft, it was a lot of fun too. I remember the Tyler Herro one. I mean,
we should replay the audio of Tyler Herro there. You had concerns. You had concerns about Tyler coming out.
I didn't think he could get to
which is why the draft is trash in the first place, is because we have no idea how these things will translate.
Well, if everybody else didn't have the same concerns I did, maybe Tyler Herro would have been taken 4 and he wouldn't be on the Miami Heat today. But
that's a good point.
One last point on the 2019 draft, kind of interesting here. The Heat ended up really liking this draft. And we know this because obviously they took Tyler Herro at 13, but we also know that they really liked a few other players in this draft too. We know that they liked PJ Washington. They were potentially targeting him at the trade deadline. We remember they liked Grant Williams a lot too, right? They worked him out a little bit going into this thing. There was a couple players they liked, but then they traded all those second rounders to get KZ Okpala, who's obviously not with the team anymore. But then you know who also was in that draft? Kyle Guy was in that draft, now on the Miami Heat. Caleb Martin went undrafted that year. He was eligible. His twin, Cody Martin, went 36 in this draft. Caleb Martin went undrafted, but was obviously eligible for this draft. They liked this draft class. They actually have a ton of guys on their roster from this draft class. Just found that interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a byproduct of just we actually had to study it because we actually had a pick. So let's find out more about these players that are available and kind of keep tabs on them. But we'll move on and we'll talk a little bit about potential playoff seeding before a quick preview of tonight's matchup against the Phoenix Suns, the best team in the Western Conference. But before that, a reminder that Built Bar is still the best option for you if you're looking for a healthy and tasty snack. Soft, easy to chew, 100% covered in chocolate. If you're trying to change your diet, if you're trying to do something a little differently to jumpstart the way you eat, then let me tell you, Built Bar is easy to incorporate, because if you're looking for a good snack without sacrificing any of the taste that you might want, then Built Bar is the solution for you. Because again, you get so many different flavors. You got their puffs, their first ever protein infused marshmallow. It might sound weird, but it's absolutely delicious, and you can get them in so many different flavors. Again, you can try their salted caramel ones. Mint chocolate might not be my personal favorite, but I know people who love them. And you can get a mixed box with all of your favorites. That makes it so much easier for you. If you can't choose, if you're like me that has a hard time choosing things sometimes, then getting a mixed box is absolutely the answer for you. And again, 100% real covered in real chocolate. Who doesn't like that? They're low calorie, high protein, all the nutrients you might be looking for without sacrificing any of the taste. So go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and you get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get your first order of Built Bars, but only if you go to built.com. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. Looks like we reached our weekly goal of 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. How soon before we can reach 3,000? That'll be, yes, we are on fire. That'll be the big question dominating the rest of the month. I'm hoping that we can reach that goal before the end of the month, and we can only do it with your support. Thanks so much for everybody who has sent in questions and
Yeah.
constantly, submits comments and things of that sort. We love hearing from you. But this is along those lines. We're going to start off this segment with a question that we received via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com. This one comes in from Narayanan. He writes in, what do you guys think about the following bracket as one that is the Heat's path of
Mhm.
least resistance? So he's got us as the number 1 seed, Miami, taking on the number 8 Toronto Raptors.
Yeah.
So right there, that's a pretty potentially difficult matchup. The Sixers versus Nets in the 2 for 7 bracket.
Mhm.
Bucks versus Celtics in 3 versus 6, and then Bulls, Cavs in 4-5.
Well, I think looking at that first matchup, you'd rather have Toronto than you would Brooklyn. There's no doubt about that. And a quick note on that: if that ends up being the first wild card or play-in game or whatever we're calling it, um, as of now, Kyrie Irving could not play in that game if Toronto ends up having the better record and home court advantage for that play-in. So if you're a Heat fan,
Right.
I think you would absolutely. I know that the Raptors have given the Heat problems. There's no I like it's not like the Kings are an option for this. It's like it's between two playoff eligible teams. But you would rather play the Raptors than the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant. There's no doubt
I think
about
that's
that.
fair.
So, yeah, that would be the optimal first round opponent, I think, for Miami. Is
So
if
I guess
Toronto
the
ends up late.
argument then is that the Nets would take out the Sixers or beat them up to some degree, so there would be a less challenge for
Yeah,
Miami.
if you think that the Nets are a better matchup for Miami than the Sixers are, which I think I would go there at this point. I think the Sixers are probably the team I don't want to see the most in the Eastern Conference at this point.
Yep.
With the Bucks probably behind them. Yeah, at this point, with what the Nets can't stop anybody, and they have not been very good lately. I know that the Heat beat them, and we were like, oh yeah, we beat Kevin Durant when he came back. But even with Kevin Durant back, they haven't been very good.
Yep.
And obviously, maybe some of that changes if Kyrie is able to play all of their games. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think you would rather play Brooklyn.
And let's not forget Ben Simmons, still a pretty good playmaker slash defender. Like I mean, all NBA level. Take him out of Philadelphia, I think he's still going to be able to thrive once does eventually come
But
back to
maybe
that
not in the
rotation.
playoffs. Like he's not been good in the playoffs. Like I know we all talk
Offensively, yeah,
about the meltdown last
yeah,
year, but
yeah,
he's like never been a factor offensively, like ever for Philadelphia. His best
yep,
moment in the playoffs came against the Miami Heat, if we remember a
yep.
few years ago in that first round matchup. But
Shout out Justice Winslow.
right,
The Bucks Celtics one here. That's a lot of fun to consider because Bucks at 3, Celtics at 6. The Celtics, a
yeah,
lot of people overlooking the Celtics, but they've been playing
yeah.
really, really good basketball. I was high in the Celtics before the season
Mhm.
started, and they've proven to weather the storm regarding any kind of issues in the locker room and things of that sort. And they've got some
Really
a
well
good
coached.
balance of scoring.
I'm at the point now where I think the Celtics could win. They could come out of the East. I really do think if the
Yeah,
bracket breaks
that's
right for them, they could. Like
high praise.
they're right up there right now with all
Yeah.
these other teams.
And Bulls Cavs is basically watching them punch each other, see who that could be a seven
Yeah,
game series there. And then that would be Miami's next matchup if they're able to dispatch the Raptors. So I think
not worried
either
about
one
any
of
of those
those
teams.
teams, yeah, exactly. Especially if Jared Allen misses a
Yeah,
considerable amount of time. But let's look ahead
Chicago
to
1-13 against the top teams in the league. Yeah,
yep. Yeah. Let's look ahead to tonight's game against the Phoenix Suns. No Chris Paul, potentially no Devin Booker, a couple other players in the
still,
Phoenix side.
yeah. Devin Booker. Just quick update on that. I checked while you were doing the ad read there, but he's still in protocols
Yeah.
as of now. It's still possible that he could come
Yep.
out and make it in time, but still listed as out on the injury report. And so is
and
Cameron
playing to
Johnson, by the way.
and playing Tuesday night in Orlando. So
Yes.
they came in late yesterday. They traveled to obviously they're in Orlando. They're playing a game there. They had shoot around this morning, and then they'll be traveling late from Orlando to Miami. So we'll see what happens. They're not shooting around tomorrow, so they're going to be resting
Mhm.
before the game. Miami will be shooting around, so they'll be preparing for that night's opponent. It should be a very, very good game without, let's assume even Booker plays. I think Miami's defense is capable of slowing him down and challenging him to a degree. And I think Miami has just enough. I wonder who is the X factor for Phoenix that could potentially step up. Is it Cam Johnson, who we were speaking about in the last segment? You think he's the guy who
Well,
could wind up having that big dynamic game?
he's still listed as out, so we'll see if he's
Oh,
cleared by the
Cam
time the
Johnson's
game
out too. That's
starts.
right.
But it
Yeah.
could be Mikal Bridges, who I think is
Right.
a star in the making, like an all-star in the making. No, but I think the X factor is DeAndre Ayton. And by the way, I think he's the X factor of this NBA season, not just
Oh,
for this game. I think he's probably the most important player in the league at this point because of
wow.
he's the answer against any sort of Golden State Warriors matchup. Because if
Right.
Phoenix does have a weakness, it's that they don't really have a lineup where they can toggle to small and kind of go up against like that Draymond small ball type lineup, unless DeAndre Ayton can play the way he did in last year's playoffs, right? And then all of a sudden that he just sort of evaporates that strength that the Warriors would have because now he's got size. If he could step out, make some threes, all these things, like specifically to this Heat game, if he could challenge Bam Adebayo in a way that not many centers have lately and make things difficult on Bam, who is sort of the hub of the offense still a little bit and things like that. Yeah, all of a
Yeah.
sudden this becomes a much more interesting matchup. And then also the other thing I'm looking at too, David, is Phoenix, even without Chris Paul in there, they have an identity. They have a culture about that team under Monty Williams where they like to
Yeah.
swing the ball. There's a lot of off ball movement. It's a really tough offense to guard. It's unpredictable. They have a lot of guys that could put the ball on the floor and make things happen. And so it's just it'll be interesting to watch the Heat's defense, which has been so connected and so tight lately, guard that kind of offense. I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just saying I'm looking
Right.
forward to watching it.
Yeah, no, and it's going to be on ESPN, a big
Oh, yeah.
national matchup there too. So Miami finally able to get some recognition. I expect Miami to find a way to win, just because when you're missing the key players that Phoenix is, it's harder to pull wins together. Having
Yeah.
said that, they're going to be a challenge anyway. You know that, to your point. I think they're going to be a well coached team. They do have that culture. Jay Crowder certainly a contributor there as well. We'll see how he performs against his former team in Miami. And Miami finally healthy too. I wonder how Victor Oladipo responds in game
Mhm.
two. Still with a crowd behind him, whether or not he'll get Oladipo chance. All that should be interesting to watch and see it play out. It's going to be a fun game. A lot of hype, a lot of big time atmosphere, and we'll be there as always to bring you the coverage that you deserve. So make sure to continue making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Now make sure you make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every day, Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.